Welcome back, crew. We're wrapping up our June game of the month, The Amazing Die RPG System by Kieron Gillen, with our review of the system. For those of you who have not watched before, each month we go through a different RPG, breaking down its basic components, going through how to build a PC, how to run the core mechanics, how to handle combat, and then something usually unique for the system, and then wrap it up with what we're doing today, our review of the game where we're going to go over our roses, thorns, and buds for the system. Shout outs to Not Another D&D podcast, who I stole this from. Roses are what you liked about the system. Buds are things that you think would be really cool to see in the future, you hope to see in the future, I should say. And then thorns are things that just may not have clicked with you with the system, or just may not have been what you expected. So we're going to kick it off with our roses. But before we do that, I do want to give a shout out. If you haven't yet, go watch our actual play for the die system. We had a blast. There's kind of two, technically three-parter. The first part is our persona generation. We went through and kind of built using the reunited ritual and got everything kind of organized. It was kind of a fun event where we played off each other's builds and had some fun collaboration making our world and PCs. We did lose Rich's audio, so there's gonna be some blank spots in the audio on that side, unfortunately. But I think it's still worth watching. We posted it anyway, but then definitely go through part one and two of our actual play. We usually just do a one shot, but with this one, I think there's so much I wanted to cover that we had to do at least a two shot. But that could have probably went on to 4 or 5 sessions if we had the time for it. So go check out those. But after you have, let's dive into the roses. This system, I loved it. One of my favorite pieces about it is it's very kind of mechanically light. It's a D6 system based off pools related to your attributes, where you roll the D6, GM sets a difficulty, and however many successes it is basically how likely or how well you're going to do something. Straightforward, simple, plain. And sometimes those mechanically light systems, you kind of feel like you kind of it gets boring quick or could get boring quick. But one of the things I loved with how Die does it, the base mechanics are simple, the classes are complex. The classes bring with their powers and attributes and all the different things they bring to bear. There's a lot of cool ways you can interact with the world, the system, and mainly your persona and kind of the issues they may have in the real world too. Like the Godbender, the Dictator, the Fool, they all have such cool things that you can do, and I think we barely scratched the surface of that. That's actually one of my buds there too. Just how you can interact with the world and how everything goes with the complexity that the voice brings, the complexity that deals with God and God that bring. It's one of those things that even with a two shot, I think we just really didn't get into it enough. But it was one of the things that with the system itself, and especially the comic, really endeared me to the world of Die. So definitely go check that out, especially if you're looking for a system your players can pick up quickly but then it's still like you can grow. They've got a really cool advancement chart that if you actually play a campaign, you can go and add new abilities. It's just a lot of cool mechanics go along with that that add a layer of interesting complexity onto a simple base that people can pick up quickly, which I think is a really cool combination on that side. Because sometimes if you have too much complexity, it turns people off. Or if it's too simple, people like me will get bored. I think this one does a really good job of balancing that blend. So that's another big shout out. I mean, my biggest shout out though overall, actually second biggest shout out. I think the mechanics are the biggest. Second biggest though is the ritual system. I think I've mentioned it on the channel before, but I don't like running pre-written adventures. It's just not my style. I like to kind of flow with the vibe of the table and come up with my own thing. But the ritual system, this really gives you some fantastic tools for doing that and a framework that supports you being new to the game, but still lets you and your players do whatever the hell you want to, which is perfect for me. For those who didn't watch the Persona Generation video, the rituals are kind of like this base guidelines for both uh, creating a scenario. So we use the reunited scenario, but there's a lot of other scenarios in the book, and it gives you questions and tips and tricks for making personas that fit that scenario. It goes over how to run the first few sessions, how to handle the conclusion, but without saying this is what you have to do. It just says, oh, these are things we can bring in. In the middle sections, it gives you tips and tricks for kind of mining the persona's backstory for different events that can happen in the real world with a lot of, or not in the die world, I should say, with giving you ways to go through and just make it your own without too much there. But I just really want to shout that out. For me, that fits really well. I know some people like pre-written adventures, but for me, it's kind of it throws me off, and this was the best way for me to feel supported with a system I wasn't super familiar with at the start. while giving me the tools to make it my own. So really major roles for that. This is the first game I've seen this type of thing with. I'm not sure if other systems run it, but I hope more systems do, or I come across more systems that do. Actually, shout out in the comments if you come across a system that has like a game that has a system similar to Rituals. Put it in the comments. Like I've added to my list for games I need to run. So major shout out to that. Another big thing I kind of along the same line with the rituals. This is like almost a little bit partially the comic, but definitely the RPG itself. It just gives really fun tools for world building. I think I mentioned this at the end of our actual play on camera, but it was just such a relief or such a fun thing to be able to go through and just have I like creatively have a whiteboard you can go through and put it on. I not have to like really worry about that verisimilitude bug that always goes around. You could go through and build worlds based off what you enjoy as a game master or your persona enjoys that you're playing as in the game, or the little pieces that are intricate to your players' backstories. Like we got to go through, we had to have an adventure that had Goliath, Grand Admiral Thrawn, Wolverine, all in the same place, and it just flowed, and nobody, it didn't really jar anybody out of the world because the world is supposed to be this crazy mashup of different concepts. And I thought that was just really freeing, and I had a really fun time being able to go through, even with the compressed amount of time with a 2 session limit to kind of find different areas where each of the players could confront some aspect of their persona and decide how they want to run it. So I enjoyed that, and I really enjoyed too. And this is another rose, kind of the premise of the system where you all have to decide to stay, or you all have to decide to go home, and only the living get a vote. I loved that conclusion. I loved how everything played out on that side with my master PC trying to corrupt or try to tip the people into staying in this world that he made for them, and them always making their own decisions. So I liked that. That was really cool to see. So and actually kind of along that kind of flows right into my next rose. I think between the persona generation, the way this world is set up with having that conflict at the end. Oh, one thing I'm gonna give one before I get to that too. I think they did a really good job with giving you tools too, because this game has the element or the the potential for a lot of or for PvP, some significant PvP with emotional backing behind it. And I think this system does a good job of giving you those safety tools. But I think it really does a good job of really giving you the tools to be able to dive in and have those personas, especially the persona generation. I think is like crucial to this system, having them kind of build in their PC, build in those personas, the flaws, the wants, the desires they have in there, and they got to get a chance to embody that. And as you go through the game, with the master kind of getting to pluck those strings, I think it really made for some cool emotional moments. With my only complaint on that side being that we only had 2 sessions to really go through it. This is what I could have easily seen making like 6, 7, 8 sessions to be able to really dive in and focus on those personas, the world, and kind of what would make them stay or leave. But just really huge shout out for that because it's easy. It was a fun persona generation process and it had depth to it, which is like a hard line to balance there again too. But those are some of my core of roses for the system. There's definitely a lot more I could say. I wanted to iterate with this one. I had a blast with it. I definitely went out and put on my recommendation list. But let's get into my buds and thorns. So buds, and I've said this enough times, you probably already guessed it. I wish I could have run a full campaign with this. I wish I could have run a full campaign with both this system and the table we had. We were vibing. I had a lot of fun with it. I hope they did as well. My biggest complaint is I had to stuff like a lot of my ideas into two sessions. And my crew were great RPers. They chewed up the seeds, so it was fun on that side. And I had to scrap some ideas I had that I thought would be fun, just that time wouldn't permit. So this is what I'm putting on my list. This is like right next to my Blades and Lancer. But when I have time and I'm not running like a whole bunch of other campaigns, I'm definitely gonna try to see if I can run a quick one with this one too. Another button, I think I mentioned this one too. I wish we got to see more of the cool mechanics that the classes bring to bear. We got to see a little bit of it with some of the flukes from the Fool, the voice from the Dictator, some of the God binding deals. But though there's so much more stuff that could go along with that, and this time didn't really permit. That another one kind of leads into that full campaign piece would really allow more of those elements to shine. So those are my buds. Overall, this is definitely one that's going on that list I want to run again. Uh, time permitting, you'll probably see more of this down the line, especially as I've kind of transitioned some other games out. But let's get into the thorns. I really didn't have too many for this system. One minor thorn, I will say this is super minor and nitpicky. Hard to do one shots in the system. I think even if we, even without like a full campaign or you kind of doing even the two shot system we did, I think it would be really hard to get a good feel of how this game is to be played with a one shot format, especially if you try to combine that with Persona Generation too. Because we did 3 sessions technically, with Persona Generation being its own, and then 2 full sessions. If we had to do Persona Generation, then diving into the action, and then kind of going through that, I feel like we wouldn't have gotten a really good look at this game. So it's just not the game for one shots, and not every game needs to be for one shots. So it's a very minor thorn there. And also, this is like a piece of advice because initially I was going to do it, but I went to the Die RPG server. Check the server out; they're super friendly, super welcoming, and helping out with your game. But initially, I was going to try to do Persona Generation just through Discord, through chatting. I think you need that table energy for Persona Generation, and they said that too. At first, I was like, I mean, 3 sessions is kind of a lot to ask for these guys for a campaign that we're kind of springing on them this month. But luckily, everybody was able to come through for it, and I think that live table energy just really adds to some of the emotional levels, and especially because you can vibe off people's answers a little bit easier with kind of hearing them at, kind of hearing and seeing them go through it than you would be kind of just seeing a Discord message pop up. So piece of advice there, but I will say minor thorn, hard to do one shots of the system. You gotta get the full value of the system displayed, I'll say. Then this one's another minor thorn, but this one like it's a minor thorn, but I'll say to me at least the system isn't about this as a whole. I do wish there was a little bit more of a robust combat system outside of what your class brings to it. I wish there's some more cool stuff you could do on that side. But a really minor thorn. The classes bring a lot of cool things you can do. Each class has a different way to interact with combat that's unique to it that really brings some spice. I think probably more on my end, but I probably could have made some more. The masters in when the master's not involved in the combat. I probably could have brought some more of the special features of the bestiary and they have with some of the options they give you. But that was just a real minor thorn there. It's something that wouldn't detract from my game. I think this to me, this game is more about the exploration of the world and the persona and confrontation of both their flaws and deciding if they want to stay or leave this magical world that was created for them. Combat's nice to have, but to me, it's not that main. It's not the main dish. It's definitely a little side piece on there. But those aren't really the only 2 thorns I had in the system. I had an amazing time with it. I think it was kind of a really cool break from some of the systems we've done in the past, and just kind of something new and something fun and light, and just that really tells a good emotional story with it. So major shout out to the Die RPG. You definitely go check it out. If you haven't yet, this has been one of my favorites I played so far this year. But yeah, shout out in the comments some things you like about the Die RPG or questions you want to have about the system, or even just comment something that you like about the actual plays. We had a real blast with that, so I hope you all enjoyed that too. Yeah, so we're wrapping up June. We're into July already. Our new game of the month is going to be Stars Without Numbers, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, thanks everybody for hanging out. Like, subscribe. We hit 1,000 this month with the Die RPG videos, so major shout out there. So thank you all for the support, and until next time.